SABC News spoke to African National Congress National Spokesperson Pule Mabe. Take a look.
The 30-day period agreed upon by the National Executive Committee will be able to allow the leadership the space to be able to clarify all of that. Provincial structures of the African National Congress had also asked for an audience with the national officials to be able to make sure that some of the issues that you two are raising now are clearly clarified, so that in the execution and operationalization of the step-aside principle, there is uniformity and consistency. You'd appreciate that the ANC has got a network of structures throughout the country. So in terms of how it executes and operationalizes its own decisions, its approach must at all times be consistent and be of a uniform nature, so that we do not find one structure here implementing a decision in another way or form and another structure there doing something else. You want to have clarity of thought that there is a shared understanding by structures of the ANC on the ground in terms of how they ought to be executing this. Within the 30-day period, so the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress would effectively use that 30-day period to make sure that all of the gray areas that could be there, misunderstanding or misinterpretations that could be there or out in the public in terms of how this is being operationalized and what this actually means. I mean, you are raising a very fundamental point. That does it mean you get paid when you have stepped aside? What does it really mean? And for how long are you stepping aside? All those things are going to be clarified. So this period effectively allows for us to be able to clarify all of that, so that in the execution of this, there is a uniformity and consistency. This is a resolution taken by the African National Congress back in 2017. The 54th National Executive Committee Collective has been doing its work, one, to establish the guidelines, which process was led by the Treasurer General. Those guidelines were ultimately adopted by the National Executive Committee, and then deal with all of the reports that were before the Integrity Commission and understand what were the sort of recommendations and allow the National Executive Committee the space to be able to attend to all of those issues. So that work has already happened. The 2017 resolution has not been suspended. What is now happening is that within this 30-day period, the Office of the Secretary General will also have the space to be able to make sure that all of the cadres that could be affected by this decision are effectively notified, so that they have got this period to be able to deal with whatever issues that they might want to deal with. So that at the conclusion of the 30-day period, if no action has not been taken, Rule 25 of the African National Congress then gets to be activated.
All right, I want to get more analysis on this, and we are joined by political analyst Sandile Swana, as well as Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast. They are on the line there. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming on. Let's start with you, Dr. Breakfast, and with regards to the step aside issue. All members who have been charged with corruption or other serious crimes must step aside within 30 days, failing which they should be suspended. How important or how high were the stakes on getting some sort of resolution on this resolution?
Well, first of all, I was not taken aback by the decision in question, simply because it was a recommendation that came from the Integrity Commission. And then that decision was upheld by the panel that was led by former President Motlanthe alongside Matthews Poswa. So I think what was needed now was to clarify certain issues here and there. But I think because of the war that broke out over the weekend, the president could not pronounce on the issue. So I think at the moment, one can see which way the wind is blowing, that the president is stamping his authority on matters of leadership. You know as well as I do that he has been accused of being the weakest president that the ANC has ever had. But last night we saw the exact opposite of that. But I think at the same time, it could have been good if that decision was going to kick in with immediate effect. Yeah. But I think they had to strike a deal so that the decision can be implemented.
Mr. Swana, how do you see it? Do you see the issue of the step-aside resolution and the pronouncements by the president of the ANC yesterday as a concrete step, or is it, as some put it, kicking the can down the road? Mr. Swana, I'm not sure if you can hear us. Please, can you just unmute?
Yes, sorry. I see it. I saw I muted. The step is a definitive step in terms of starting the process of removing people who are inclined to involve themselves in criminal activities within the African National Congress. This is a very important step. It is a small step, but it's an important step. It's definitely. You must remember that there's an emphasis here on criminal charges, but there are other institutions such as the SIU, and I think there's a Public Service Commission and others that can find against you, and there are many cadres who are implicated by those institutions for wrongdoing within government. So this is a first step, but there's a bigger, this is the tip of the iceberg of what needs to be done to cleanse the public sector in South Africa of corruption.
Dr. Breakfast, the NC president yesterday also said that the NEC welcomed the decision by the ANC Secretary General Magashule to use this time to seek counsel of past leaders of the movement. Who are we talking about here in terms of past leaders?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. But I presume that maybe he might consult people who are senior in the ANC, because I presume that he must be in pain at the moment as we speak. Because this is the first time a decision of this magnitude has been made to let go of the SG of the ANC. But I think there will be a backlash in some quarters, in particular from the forces of RET. I don't think that they are going to back off or they are going to take this lying down. I think the tensions are going to escalate. I think they see this as basically a way of getting rid or purging people who are not aligned to President Ramaphosa. So maybe when other people appear in court, they are going to take a strategic advantage of that and take a swipe at the leadership of the ANC for defying the resolutions of the conference. And maybe there might be other strategic alliances that they are going to engage in with some people, maybe the EFF and some civil society organization, like BLF and so on.
Mr. Swana, also with regards to the pronouncement regarding the RET, the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa also said that the NEC expressed concern at the use of the name of Mkonto Wesizwe to promote factionalism in the ANC. These pronouncements, how do you think it'll play out in the rank and file of the ANC?
First of all, I think we are now in certainly in the politics of making sure that Ramaphosa and his faction have an open road to securing perhaps even the candidates they prefer for the municipal elections, and also to secure their own future in the next year's election to the NEC and so on and so forth. So there is definitely a political chess game that is at play here, and that is going to be a major point of rallying major forces. And you must remember that there are other controversies, neoliberalism and so on, neoliberal economic policies. So those things are going to play themselves out. So that is where all of this is going to be. This is not the end of the game. This is probably, it's going to be very tough the next 2 years. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's speak about that. Let's stay with you, Mrs. Swana, with regards to unity in the ANC. The president of the ANC, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, saying yesterday that the ANC NEC meeting was robust, but in the end, they were able to find each other in uniting the ANC. In politics, we know that perception seems to be everything. How do you think the ANC is being viewed by its supporters as well as its opponents, political opponents?
I think that the issue of, let me just start off with this MK issue in terms of unity and all that. You must remember that there are two of these. I think the MK Veterans Council and the MKVA. The head of the MK Council, Siphiwe Nyanda, was mentioned extensively in the corruption at Transnet. And Kebi Mupatswe and the Kalni House implicated themselves in a lot of. So you are talking about two groups that have got their own problems. So when you are trying to unite them.
Oh, Mr. Swana, I think we lost you there a bit. If you just can unmute.
Sorry?
All right, so we just lost you there, but just repeat your last sentence.
Sorry, yeah. So I'm saying the ordinary public is actually aware that the ANC.
All right, it seems that we're having some issue with Mr. Swana's line. You back there? Third time's the charm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. For the opposition parties see clearly that the ANC is divided, and divided specifically by tactics, and secondly by poor ideological.
Let's just wrap it up with you, Dr. Breakfast. We're just having a bit of an issue with Mr. Swana's line. So we'll wrap up the conversation with Dr. Breakfast with regards to the question of unity. Do you think post this NEC meeting, is the ANC more or less united?
No, of course not. I think, the forces of RAT could have broken away from the ANC long time ago. They could have. They could have walked away from the ANC, but they did not, simply because if you walk away from the ANC, you might not survive outside the ANC, because the name ANC is a brand. It's like a currency. So their strategy was to fight their political battles on the inside, as opposed to fighting their political battles on the outside. But I think those tensions are going to escalate, and I think the Ramaphosa faction is going to take an advantage of having numbers and make decisions that might not sit well with the other faction.
Yeah, it's a developing story. No doubt we have a lot of eyes on the story. We'll bring you all the latest developments. Dr. Breakfast, as well as Mr. Swana, we thank you both very much for your time and your perspective. Be well. God bless.
Thank you very much.
All right, look, there's lots to talk about here with regards to various analysis on what happened yesterday, last night as well. In terms of getting you the way forward, we're going to bring in much more role plays on this program during the course of today and get you a succinct take on what was announced yesterday by the president of the ANC and where the party is heading to. Lots to cover over the next 3 hours.